Have you ever felt like your heart was too broken to try again? Like love, language, even life itself lost their color? This story isn't about falling apart. It's about learning how to rise again, slowly, softly, like a sunrise after a long Danish winter. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from listening to your heart, to your words, and to the quiet voice that still whispers, "You're not done yet." Opening hook. The morning everything changed. It was a quiet winter morning in Aarhus, the kind where the sky forgets to wake up, and everything feels gray, even inside your chest. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, holding a cold cup of coffee that had gone untouched for hours. The clock ticked, the radiator hummed, and for the first time in a long time I realized he wasn't coming back. That morning changed everything, not because something dramatic happened, but because nothing did. Silence can be cruel that way. It doesn't shout. It just stays heavy and patient, waiting for you to finally listen. And that's when I understood. Sometimes the real heartbreak begins after the goodbye. When you lose someone, it's not only the person you lose, it's your routine, your laughter, your sense of direction. You lose the version of yourself that only existed when they were around. And suddenly, you're left with an apartment full of echoes and a heart that doesn't know what to do with all its love. I used to think healing meant moving on quickly, like deleting old photos, buying a plane ticket, or pretending I was fine. But that morning, something inside me whispered differently. Healing, it said, isn't a race. It's a slow conversation with your own pain. And Denmark, the winter light is honest. It shows everything, even the cracks you tried to hide. As I looked out the window, snow was falling softly over the street, covering the world in quiet forgiveness. It didn't ask me to forget him. It just reminded me that life still had rhythm. Maybe love doesn't die. It just changes form, becomes the sound of your own breathing, the warmth of your hands, the courage to start again. So that morning, I made myself a promise. I would stop trying to be okay, and instead I would learn how to listen to the silence, to my heart, and even to my broken English sentences as I practiced speaking alone in my room. Because somehow learning English and healing a heart feels strangely similar. Both take patience, mistakes, and the willingness to sound foolish before you sound free. And maybe that's how all beginnings start, quietly when no one's watching. The empty apartment, when silence became too loud. There's a kind of silence that isn't peaceful at all. It's not the quiet after a long day or the calm before sleep. It's the silence that screams, the kind that fills every corner of your apartment when someone's laughter is missing. That was my world for weeks after he left. Every sound became a memory. The kettle boiling reminded me of Sunday mornings. The creak of the wooden floor sounded like his footsteps returning home. Even the refrigerator hummed like it was mocking me, whispering, "You're still alone." I tried to drown it all out with music, podcasts, even YouTube videos in English, but the silence always found its way back. Funny thing is, silence doesn't just happen outside, it grows inside you too. When you lose someone, it's not just the room that feels empty. It's your voice. You stop talking to yourself, stop humming songs, stop saying good morning out loud. You shrink. I didn't realize how much noise love made until it was gone. One afternoon, I sat on the couch staring at my phone screen, scrolling aimlessly through old photos, pretending to be fine. You know that word, right? Fine. It's the most popular lie in every language. We say it because we don't want to admit the truth, that we're scared of the silence because it forces us to feel. But silence, as cruel as it feels, is also a mirror. It shows you everything you've been avoiding. When I finally stopped fighting it, I heard something new inside it, my own heartbeat. It was slow, steady, and alive. That sound reminded me, I'm still here. There's a psychological truth behind this. When we face silence after emotional loss, our brains crave distraction. But according to studies from Aarhus University, silence actually activates areas of the brain linked to self-awareness and healing. In other words, silence hurts first, then it helps. So I began a little ritual. Every night I'd sit quietly with a cup of tea and listen to my breathing, the wind, maybe even my own clumsy English practice. I'd repeat words slowly. I am here. I am learning. I am healing. It wasn't dramatic and no one saw it happen. But that's the thing about recovery, it rarely looks like a movie. It looks like one small person in a quiet Danish apartment, learning how to exist again, word by word, breath by breath. And maybe that's how hope sounds before it finds its voice. The turning point, when pain started teaching me, it happened on an ordinary Tuesday. No miracles, no grand sign from the universe. Just me, my half-cold coffee, and a sentence I heard from a podcast while trying to practice English listening. Maybe the pain isn't there to destroy you. Maybe it's there to wake you up. That single line hit harder than any grammar lesson ever could. Because I realized I'd been living half asleep for years. I spoke, worked, and smiled on autopilot. I existed, but I wasn't alive. Pain for the first time became my teacher. It taught me how fragile happiness is, but also how powerful awareness can be. It made me listen, really listen to the world again, to the rhythm of footsteps on a rainy street in Copenhagen, to the laughter of strangers at a cafe, to the soft tack when someone held the door for me, and something strange began to happen. The more I listened outwardly, the more I started hearing inwardly too. My thoughts, once chaotic and dark, started forming sentences of hope. Simple words like, "You're doing okay. Keep going. Just one more day." That's when I realized language learning and healing aren't so different. Both require patience, repetition, and the courage to sound foolish while you grow. The first time you speak again, whether it's in love or in English, it feels awkward, broken, and uncertain. But it's still progress. There's a Danish saying I love. Livet skal leaves forfra, men forstes bagfra. Life must be lived forwards, but understood backwards. At that moment, those words made sense. I didn't need to erase the pain or the mistakes. I just had to move forward with them. So I began speaking again, not just to others but to myself. In English. In Danish. In the language of survival. Every word became an act of defiance. Every phrase a quiet promise. I am learning how to live again. And maybe that's what true fluency really is. Not speaking perfectly but feeling fully, because when you finally understand that your pain is part of your story, not the end of it, that's when life starts to whisper again. You're ready for your next chapter. The chapter of becoming. When you start living, not just existing. There's a small bridge in Copenhagen, the kind tourists pass without noticing. But one evening I stood there for almost an hour, watching the light dance on the water. The city was quiet, the wind smelled like rain, and for the first time I didn't feel broken. I just felt present. That moment didn't fix everything, but it changed something. I realized I had stopped chasing who I used to be. I wasn't waiting for him to come back, or for the old version of me to return. I was simply standing still, breathing, noticing, alive. That we spend so much of our lives trying to be someone again, to be happy again, to be confident again. But maybe healing isn't about becoming who you were. Maybe it's about meeting who you're becoming. And that person, the one who survived heartbreak, learned to say no, learned to say thank you in Danish, learned to sit with silence. That person deserves your love more than anyone else. There's a power in starting over, in making coffee just for yourself, in walking without a destination, in learning English not because you have to, but because it reminds you that growth is still possible. Every new word, every small step, every quiet morning, it all counts. That night, standing on the bridge, I whispered to myself, "You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be." The city lights didn't answer, but the water seemed to nod. Maybe that was enough. Because healing doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes as a soft exhale, a tiny piece that tells you, you can start living again. So, if you're listening to this right now, feeling lost or tired, remember, you are not broken. You are becoming. And every word you hear, every lesson you learn, is a step toward the life you deserve. Question for your heart. When was the last time you truly felt alive? Not just breathing but living? Think about it. Whisper your answer. Then start from there. The quiet power of hope. When light finds you again, there's a strange thing about hope. It doesn't knock loudly. It slips in quietly, like the first ray of sun sneaking through your curtains after a long winter night. You barely notice it until suddenly your room isn't dark anymore. In Denmark, winter can last forever. The sky turns gray, the air feels heavy, and you start to forget what sunlight looks like. I remember one morning when I walked to the bus stop, everything around me covered in fog, even my thoughts. But then I heard laughter. Two strangers joking about the weather in Danish, and somehow I smiled. That's how hope comes back. Not as a miracle, but as a whisper that says, maybe things will be okay. When you lose something or someone you love, it feels like life pauses. But life doesn't stop, it just changes the rhythm. And when you train your mind to listen again, really listen, you start hearing the small, beautiful sounds you once ignored. The sound of your shoes on wet pavement. The clinking of cups in a cafe. The voice in an English listening exercise that says, repeat after me. Each sound becomes a reminder, you're still here. Science says our brains crave hope the way our lungs crave air. Even in sadness, your brain keeps searching for reasons to keep going. That's why you keep pressing play on videos like this. You don't want motivation, you want connection. You want to believe that light can find you again. And it can. Every time you learn a new phrase, every time you speak English, even if your accent feels wrong, You're proving something powerful. You haven't given up. You're rebuilding your voice word by word, moment by moment. That's what hope looks like in real life. So if you're tired, if your dreams feel distant, if your heart feels too heavy to lift, stop trying to force the light. Just open a small window. Sometimes that's all hope needs. Because the truth is, light doesn't find the strongest people. It finds the ones who are still willing to look up. Even when you can't see the sun, it still rises. And so will you. Finding meaning, turning pain into purpose. Have you ever wondered why pain feels so personal? Like it was written specifically for you? In Denmark, during one of those long silent winters, I used to sit by the frozen lake near Aarhus and ask myself the same thing. Why me? Why did my love end? Why did my dream fall apart? Why couldn't I just move on like everyone else seemed to? But here's what I learned: pain isn't a punishment. It's a teacher. It shows up when something inside you is ready to grow. You don't heal by forgetting what happened. You heal by finding meaning in what happened. When I first started learning English again after heartbreak, I wasn't just learning a language, I was learning how to speak again. Every new word was like a tiny act of rebellion against silence. Every time I repeated a phrase aloud, I was proving to myself, I'm still alive. I can still connect. I can still express who I am. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth. The idea that we don't just recover after pain, we can actually transform through it. Think about it. Every scar has a story. And those stories, when shared, become bridges, connecting us to others who are also trying to find meaning. Maybe that's why this video found you today. Maybe you're not here to learn English. Maybe you're here to learn how to speak to yourself again, to find your voice beneath the noise of regret and fear. The funny thing is, when you practice speaking English slowly and clearly, you also learn to slow down your thoughts. You start to listen to your own words, not just repeat them. You begin to believe them. And one day, the sentence, "I'm trying my best," stops sounding like an excuse and starts sounding like truth. Turning pain into purpose doesn't mean pretending you're okay. It means using what broke you as fuel to build something stronger. Even if that something is just your next word. So here's the secret I wish someone told me. The meaning you're looking for won't come from outside. It's created every time you choose to rise again, every time you choose to keep speaking, even when your voice shakes. Because maybe your purpose was never to avoid pain, but to learn how to turn it into something beautiful. Small steps, learning to live again. It's strange how healing doesn't announce itself. There's no music, no fireworks, no grand epiphany. One day you just realize you're breathing a little easier. The coffee tastes good again. You laugh at something small, and for a second you forget that you were ever broken. That's what healing looks like. Small, invisible steps. When I first moved to Denmark, I felt like a ghost in my own life. Every street, every conversation, every word of Danish felt like a reminder that I didn't belong. I stopped talking, stopped trying. Until one morning I decided to take a walk, just 10 minutes around the block. I listened to an English podcast while watching the city wake up. And that tiny act, listening, walking, noticing, became my first real step toward living again. Sometimes we think we need big change. A new job, a new love, a new dream. But the truth is, your life starts changing the moment you take one small, consistent step. When you listen to one English story a day. When you practice saying one new word out loud. When you decide, I'll try again today. Science backs this up. 2 small, repeated actions literally rewire your brain. Each time you repeat a positive habit, you're teaching your neurons to believe, I can do this. It's called neuroplasticity, but really, it's just hope with a scientific name. So, if you're waiting for a sign to start again, this is it. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to show up for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can. Speak one sentence. Listen to one short story. Celebrate the tiny progress that no one else sees. Because here's the thing. Healing doesn't happen when you finally get over it. It happens when you learn to live with it. When your pain becomes part of your rhythm but not your entire song. And over time, those small steps add up. You'll look back one day and realize, you didn't just survive, you rebuilt yourself word by word, breath by breath. So today, take one small step. Whisper one kind sentence to yourself in English. I'm still here. And I'm learning to live again. Full circle, the heart that speaks again. There comes a moment when the silence inside you finally breaks. Not with a shout, but with a whisper. It's the moment your heart speaks again. Not in perfect grammar, not in perfect timing, but in truth. And that's when you realize, you've come full circle. In Denmark, where the sunsets stretch endlessly across the sky, I remember standing by the harbor one evening. The water shimmered with light, the same place where I once cried months before. Only this time the tears didn't come. Instead I smiled. Because even though the pain hadn't completely gone, it no longer controlled me. It had become part of my story. Not the ending, but the beginning of something new. Learning English had started as a distraction, a way to fill the silence. But slowly it became my bridge back to life. Each word I learned helped me translate not just a language but my emotions. Hope, change, healing. They weren't just vocabulary, they were milestones. Proof that I could understand the world again. When you train your ears to listen, you also train your heart to feel. You start hearing meaning where others hear noise. You begin to see how words can rebuild you. Softly, steadily. That's the beauty of language. It connects broken pieces in ways that silence never could. Maybe you're here because you lost something. A person, a dream, a version of yourself. But what if I told you that you didn't lose it all? You just changed shape. And the person you're becoming is still you, wiser, deeper, softer. So let your heart speak again. In English, in your native language, in silence, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep speaking. Because the more you do, the clearer your inner voice becomes. And one day you'll realize something simple yet profound. You never truly lost yourself. You were just learning to hear yourself again.